Hello and welcome to ESPN FC Live. My name is Mark Donaldson alongside Don Hutchison, Rob Dawson and Sam Tighe. Manchester City getting most of our focus today. We'll take a deep dive in a Premier League preview and whether or not new boss Enzo Maresca can be victorious and win the Premier League at the first time of asking. Also, we've asked the three guests to pick out a standout player that might be a bit of a surprise in the Premier League this season. You're not allowed to go for the big boys that we already know about. That's still to come. We're going to start with Manchester City. And we're going to start with a full screen. And this is Rob Dawson's predicted 11 under Enzo Maresca. Was this an easy thing to put together, Rob?
No, not particularly, because obviously, we're doing this show, and Rodri is still a City player, and if he's there at the end of the window, then obviously he would be in that team. I think that's up in the air at the moment. It looks likely that Real Madrid are at least going to bid for him, and then obviously City are going to have a decision to make about whether they let him go or not. I would suggest at this moment in time, it looks like that he's going to leave, which means that they're going to have to rejig that midfield a little bit. It's not going to be Rodri and Elliot Anderson in midfield. They're going to have to find someone else. I've put Nico O'Reilly in there, who's done a great job at left back. I just felt that maybe he could be the one to benefit from Rodri's departure. And then most of the other positions kind of take care of themselves. I mean, they've got a wonderfully deep squad. They've added Elliot Anderson in there. They may sign a couple more, possibly a right back to challenge Matheus Nunes at right back. And then they're also linked with Boadi at Lille, who was obviously a breakout star for Morocco at the World Cup. Whether he would come in and be a regular at 18 years old in the Premier League, I'm not so sure. But they are going to still do some business. There's obviously a decision to make there about Rodri. But as we're recording right now, that's a best guess.
Don, which player, and I'm trying to lead the witness here, given that Phil Foden was in Rob's 11 there. Which player do you think stands to benefit most from Enzo Maresca's appointment?
Do you know what? I think that's a fascinating question. And I think it's one worth keeping an eye on, because I think the rhetoric is, managers coming in after legendary managers over the years, we've seen they've struggled. I might be the opinion this year under Maresca. I wonder if people like Haaland gets any better. I wonder if he plays a little bit more freer. I wonder if he has more touches of the ball. I think Phil Foden seems like the obvious one to me. I mean, looking at the 11 there, I mean, it's strange how you're looking at a potential Man City 11 without John Stones and Bernardo Silva. Those two obviously are going to be moving on or have moved on. So that's something the club have got to deal with. Loads and loads of quality and experience. But you've got to imagine, surely at some point Maresca has got to have a word with Phil Foden in pre-season and just give him all the tools, all the confidence, and tell him. And you might have to fluff it a little bit and just say, listen, you're the best player in the world. You're going to be in my team. You're going to be in my number 10 position. You're in competition with Cherki, obviously. But you've got to give players like Foden the confidence just to go on and try and forge your way, A, back into the team, but then B, to be the player that he once was. Because he's got it. You don't lose it. So he's the one I think I'm most likely to keep an eye on, thinking, can Maresca improve him?
Sam, Don's just spoken about replacing a legend. That's Enzo Maresca's job. Pep Guardiola won everything with Manchester City. We've seen people in the past, like David Moyes, going to Old Trafford across the city and not being able to get anywhere near what he hoped to do because he wasn't given the time. Do you think there'll be patience in the club's hierarchy to allow Enzo Maresca time to properly do his job to replace Pep Guardiola?
Yeah, I think there will be patience, and that's helped by the fact that they know Enzo Maresca very, very well. Like this isn't much of a punt, is it? This is a man who was coached under Pep Guardiola, knows the City system, and knows a lot of these players, knows the style. I mean, it's about the safest appointment you could possibly make, I think. So I expect them to start pretty well. I know that we've got some evidence here of managers struggling to replace legends. You mentioned David Moyes stepping into the shadow of Sir Alex, and obviously Unai Emery was the man who replaced Arsene Wenger and didn't go so well. But Arne Slot did surprisingly well in the wake of Jurgen Klopp, and I'm actually looking at that situation more closely as maybe what I expect here, because there'll be a lot of Pepisms and a lot of Pep automatisms still in this team. And okay, you've changed the manager, but they'll still be there. And Maresca won't change too much. But what he'll benefit from early on, I think, is the fact that this system is so well drilled and these players are so aware of what they have to do that will just carry on going. And Maresca will be a benefactor of that. What I think will be very interesting then is when you get to around Christmas time, is that still working? Has Maresca managed to put his own stamp on things? Has he managed to take them up a new level? Or will the pep start to wear off? That is where I think it will start to get tricky for City. But I do think they'll be absolutely fine early on. And especially so if he can get Phil Foden to be his Cole Palmer. And I think we can all agree that Foden absolutely has it in him to do whatever Palmer has done under Maresca at Chelsea.
Yeah, it's one to watch with Foden, how much game time he gets and the impact that he makes, because Manchester City haven't played their first pre-season game yet, but he's certainly someone that could benefit. Rob, Sam's already mentioned the fact that Maresca's been at Man City before. He was in charge of the elite development squad. He won the Premier League 2 in 2021. This seems to be the obvious appointment, as Sam was suggesting. At the club, what do you think they're saying to him as far as what his aims for the first season should be?
Well, I think that they're very realistic. I mean, what they've sort of said to us behind the scenes is that they knew that whoever came in or whoever they picked to replace Guardiola was going to be a risk. What they've tried to do with Maresca is minimise as much of that risk as possible. You've mentioned David Moyes there a couple of times. What David Moyes struggled to do at United was get senior players on board very quickly, and that shouldn't really be a problem for Maresca. He already knows the likes of Ruben Dias, Erling Haaland, Rodri. If he stays, that's his core leadership group, and he already knows them from when he was Pep's assistant anyway. So if you're talking about getting buy-in quickly from those players, then that shouldn't be a problem. I think the issue is going to come, like Sam said, later down the line, where maybe results don't go their way. But I think City, in terms of their hierarchy, are quite well prepared for that. They know that this isn't going to be an easy job. They're not sort of suggesting that Maresca has to win the Premier League title in his first year to keep his job. They know that this is going to be a tough transition, because it was going to be a tough transition for anyone taking over from Pep Guardiola. It would have been if they went and got Luis Enrique from PSG. It would have been just as tough for him. So I think they're realistic in that regard. The thing is, though, that in the last sort of decade beyond that, even when you go back to sort of Mancini and Pellegrini, this is a team that are used to winning things. And so if results don't go their way, say in the second half of the season, say they get knocked out of the title race relatively early and they don't sort of carry on in the domestic cups and the Champions League, it will be interesting to see if City have that same patience with Maresca then than they're saying they're going to have now. I mean, I think really, as I said before, that I think they're realistic about what the aims are for this season. Their aim before every season is to get back in the Champions League. I think if City remain on course for that throughout the season, you know, if they were to drop out of the race for the Champions League, I think that there would be an issue there. I don't expect that with the players that they've got. So I think as long as they get sort of guaranteed a return to the Champions League, I think City will be quite comfortable with it. Obviously, at some stage, Maresca will be asked to win things, because that's the City way now. You have to win the Premier League, you have to win domestic trophies and the Champions League. I just don't think that they're really expecting that in this first season, because it is going to be tough. It's going to be tough for anyone. They try to minimise as much of the risk as they can with the Maresca appointment, but they're realistic. You know, it's not just a smooth. These things aren't a smooth transition. It takes time to bed in your ideas and get your ideas across, and I think they're prepared for that.
With all that in mind, Rob, and the fact there has been a churn and a turnover of players and a new manager, that's all factored into the price for City to win the league. I still think they're huge value at 3-1. I'd rather take City at 3-1 than Arsenal at 6-4. Where's the value for you there?
I mean, sitting here right now, I would say that City are genuine title contenders. They've got the players to do it. The bulk of the players have been there and seen it before. The one unknown is whether Maresca can get a team over the line in the Premier League. As I say, I think in terms of transition, the transition should be easier for him than perhaps it would have been for other managers. So City have got that going for them. Arsenal will again fancy their chances because they did it last year. Rio Ferdinand used to say that he could never understand why punters would never look at the team who just won the Premier League and make them the favourites, because they're the ones who did it last. And you know, a lot of people will be looking at Arsenal to do it again. But there's a lot of unknowns around the rest of the Premier League. You know, can Man United cope with getting back in the Champions League and the extra games that they're going to have there? Chelsea have got a new manager in Xabi Alonso, who's never managed in the Premier League. Tottenham is anyone's guess because they've finished 17th in the last 2 years and have now spent a load of money in the transfer window. If you're looking at solid contenders, I would suggest that the two really to look at are Arsenal and City. And City have got the players who have done it before. So sitting here right now, I would suggest that, to me, City are favourites, followed closely by the likes of Arsenal. I think Chelsea have got an advantage with not playing European football, but City are without a doubt right in there.
City at 3-1. For me, it's too big. Donna, I want you to have another look at the full screen graphic, if you wouldn't mind, at Rob's potential starting 11 under Enzo Maresca. If Rodri doesn't go, and he's had the little operation, little medical thing, he should be okay for the start of the season. If it's Anderson and Rodri, and O'Reilly goes back to left back, do you think that is the strongest squad in the Premier League, the strongest 11 in the Premier League?
No, I don't think it's the strongest 11 that I'd be looking at. Rodri's a massive factor, and he changes the dynamics because Nico O'Reilly's a better fullback than Ryan Aït-Nouri. Aït-Nouri's a wing-back. So you've still got, when you look at those two fullbacks, Aït-Nouri and Nunez, you're still looking at two midfield players that are playing slightly out of position. Now, they're starting to learn it, especially Nunez. He was very, very good last year. But you're still looking at a young Doku. You're still looking at a young Semenyo. We're still waiting. Can Phil Foden get back to his best? Can Cherki replace him? Haaland's the standout one where you know exactly what you're going to get. I think the interesting thing comes, from the talking points of the lads have mentioned, and I can imagine the headlines halfway through the season that Maresca didn't go strong in the domestic cup competitions, and say they went out early in the cup competitions. That's something Pep's never done. He's always went strong. He's respected the domestic cups and he's won them all. So the fact that in the headlines that are going to come this season, and it might not happen, if they go out of a competition, we've known forever in a title race, while Pep comes alive the last 3 months of a title race, that's just exactly what he does, and it's written in stone. It's there in black and white, and he was so close last year doing it again. Well, we're looking at Maresca. Has he got the same aura where he can stand there or sit there in the press conference and say, with 3 months to go, whatever the number might be, you might be 3 in front, you might be 3 behind, we are going to win the league this year because we finished strong. Those are all the things we don't know. We've got to second guess him because it's a new Man City manager. And the lads are right to point out he's been there before. He was there when they won the treble. So continuity in terms of the new manager to the players should be a little bit smoother. I think it comes with the headlines that might be written if it's not going smoothly. That's where he might struggle feeling the pressure.
I think, Sam, they've kind of benefited from a decent start to the season. Bournemouth at home, Palace away, Coventry at home. Then it gets harder. Man United away, Sunderland home, Liverpool away. But when you think how many members of the squad have been away at the World Cup and maybe coming back in fits and starts, that's not a bad start to the season for City, Sam, is it?
Yeah, look, there are at this point with no real easy games in the Premier League. Maybe you can make an exception sometimes.
You sound like Arsene Wenger here, didn't
the promoted
see
three.
No easy
yes,
games.
Well, I mean, look, there's the strength of this middle order these days. You know, these games are really, really difficult. Maybe you accept the promoted three season by season basis. We will see, but otherwise, every game feels tough, I think. But on paper, you can't ask for much more. And I think that nice early Manchester derby is a great opportunity for Enzo Maresca and for Carrick, of course, and the other dugout to really, really like rubber stamp the claim on the league, you know, to show the skill and the strength. Because if City get through those first 3 games and they pick up 9 points, we'll all go, well, yeah, obviously, look at the fixture list. Bigger tests to come. Well, let's get one of those tests in nice and early. Not first, not second, but 4th or 5th, I think it is, in the fixture list. Yeah. Ideal, absolutely ideal. And go into that game with the full of confidence on a ramp. And I think it's fantastic that we get the opportunity to see those two teams pit their wits against each other so early on there, and we get to get a real test for Maresca in a big game against a team that will go in behind them, that will play with speed, that will play with strength, and will be clinical. So yeah, I think it's for Maresca probably can't ask for a better 4 games, I would argue, in terms of showing everybody that he can start quick and he can make a statement nice and early too.
Rob, producer Sam asked you for a predicted end of transfer window 11, and I noted in the graphic there are no players in there that have yet to sign. What have you heard about potential targets, maybe incomings and outgoings for City between now and the next few weeks?
Well, they are expected to do a little bit more business. I mentioned earlier in the show about Boadi. That's a player that they've looked at before the World Cup. Obviously, had a great World Cup with Morocco. They were looking at him even before the speculation increased around Rodri. So if Rodri was to go, you'd expect them to sign another central midfield player. Obviously, Boadi is very high on that list. If they can get a deal done with Lille. There are other names like Mark Bernal at Barcelona that they've looked at. Obviously, lots of this depends on what happens with Rodri. Right now, City's stance is that they're still hoping that he may turn around and sign a new contract. I think with each passing day, that becomes less and less likely. And as I said earlier, at some stage, if Real Madrid come in with a suitable offer, City are going to have a decision to make about a player who's 30 years old and has got 1 year left on his contract. In terms of other positions, they have been looking at other right backs to give a little bit of competition for Matheus Nunes. They were happy with how Nunes played last season, but they're conscious that, as Don has just said there, he's not a natural right back, and so they may need a more natural right back to come and give him a bit of competition. They looked at Pedro Porro earlier in the summer before he signed a long contract at Tottenham, so obviously that opportunity is now gone, but it's another area of the squad that they may look at. In terms of outgoings, there are players whose futures are in doubt, the likes of Tijani Reinders, Nico Gonzalez, who obviously came from Porto, hasn't really rubber stamped his place in a starting 11, hasn't played a massive amount of games last season. So if a team was to come in for an offer for either of those players that City deem suitable, it's likely that they would go. I think also what City have shown in particularly in the last sort of 18 months since Hugo Viana became the director of football is that they are a lot more open to opportunistic signings in a way that maybe Cheeky Begiristan wasn't. Begiristan always looked like he had this very set plan and that he wanted to follow it no matter what. Hugo Viana has looked like he's more open to diving into a deal that maybe didn't present itself earlier in the window. You saw that in January with Mark Guéhi and Anton Semenyo. City don't tend to do an awful lot of business in January, but saw two proven Premier League players who were available, and they went and did both those deals very, very quickly. So if there was something like that was to come on to Hugo Viana's desk, I wouldn't be surprised if they did something that was a little bit of a surprise. So that they are still expected to do a little bit of business, but I think a lot of that depends on what happens with Rodri between now and the deadline.
I'm going to take you back, Don, to 2023. There was a young lad, he was just 20 at the time, who was called up to the Scotland squad by Steve Clarke. His name was Elliot Anderson. He pulled out through injury and never pulled on the dark blue jersey. If he had, we'd be sitting here right now having won the World Cup with Anderson and McTominay.
Absolutely.
But we're not, because people close to him kind of got in his ear and said, well, without being disrespectful to Scotland, you're better than that. You can play for England. You can be a mainstay in their game. He's now gone to City, having been at Newcastle, then Forest. Now it's City for a fortune. What are Manchester City getting with Elliot Anderson?
Well, it takes me back a little bit more recent than that and think of what could have been at Newcastle. When you think of Elliot Anderson, Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes, that could have been, in my opinion, the best midfield in the country. So they're getting a player. I'm not sold when I look at the transfer fee and I look at 120 million. My 120 million midfield players are the likes of Rodri, the likes of Vitinha. That's what 120 million pound midfield player looks like to me. But what they're getting a young player that can run. They're getting a young player that's got a good range of passing. They're getting a player that can control games. We saw that when he was playing for Forest last year, especially. It looked like when you were watching him last year, he'd outgrown Forest and he was just too good and too big. So it was inevitable that he was going to move on. So, yeah, they're getting a player that's versatile. He's like an old school player to me. He's like a Gerrard. He's like that sort of Paul Ince, Brian Robson type where he can go box to box. You don't set him in one position and just say, right, you're playing here, that's your position. You might even see him play at right back every now and again, or as an 8, or as a 10, or as a holding midfield player, or all of the above in game. So you're getting a young player, you're getting a versatile player, you're getting a player that's full of quality. He's fit, he's durable, never injured, and a player that's nowhere near his peak. So they've signed him, you would have thought, at exactly the right time.
Before we get the predictions as to where Manchester City are going to finish, I just want one word. I want it to be either yes or no from the three lads. Will Rodri be a Manchester City player when the transfer window closes? Sam, you can go first.
No.
Okay. Rob?
No.
Don?
No.
Okay. Prediction time. New boss, Enzo Maresca. Let's start with you, Rob. Where do Manchester City finish?
I think they finished second, but only just.
Okay. Don?
Yeah, I'm the same, because I think Chelsea might be very, very close to finishing second.
Sam, with Villa winning the league, clearly, will City get close to them?
Probably 20-point gap. Yeah, except the other way. I'm with the guys, and sorry to make it a clean sweep, boring on the two questions, but yeah, I think second feels like the floor because of the player quality. We've stressed the point. All right, there are unknowns. Erling Haaland's up front. It can't go too wrong. So keep it simple, keep it realistic, and there is scope for them to win this league if Arsenal are as injured as people are worried about here heading into the season. If the big three are hurt, it could create something.
I just think the bookies have got it wrong. With Manchester City as big as 3-1, that's your value. City to win the Premier League. What about the breakout stars in the Premier League? We've asked our three guests who is going to be on the lips of many and most at the end of the season, players that maybe aren't on the lips of many right now. Sam, do you want to start with this? I want to see how left field each of us have gone. Who's your breakout star for 26-27 in the Premier League?
I think there's a decent chance I've gone the furthest left here. Bournemouth new striker Alvaro Rodriguez is my pick.
Yes, you have, and I don't even know what everyone else has gone.
There you go, yeah. Look, I mean, he's someone I really liked at Elche, and so I'm excited to see him move to the Premier League. I love Bournemouth scouting. They just get it. They're so good at identifying players that can hack it in the Premier League, that can hack the physicality and can come in and do the job. We know that they did a tremendous job replacing their entire defensive unit last season. And Rodriguez is coming in for not that much money, to be honest. I think it's like 20-25 million pounds. Very cheap in today's market. Aerially speaking, this guy is top. So expect lots of crosses, lots of duels, a lot of battling. But he's got some nice quick feet as well. And okay, he's rough around the edges in front of goal. But there'll be a couple of moments here when you watch Rodriguez, I promise you, where he'll do like a little shimmy and a little dribble and make room for a shot. And you will think, that does remind me a little bit of Hugo Ekitike. He's obviously not as good, but I mean, stylistically, you'll just see him do a couple of things and you'll go, yeah, okay. So he's going to be piquing my interest for sure. He's got a long way to go. I think he's just 22, so just getting started.
Yeah, I enjoyed commentating on him for the Fran Verdes last year at Elche. He's just got that something, that je ne sais quoi, and just can turn it on. Like the pick, where they play him with Ryan if he stays, with Krupi Jr. if he stays, you're right. The scouting department has been very good. Interesting pick. Don, who have you gone for as your kind of left field breakout pick for the Premier League this season?
I think mine's more middle of the road pick. We had a fascinating chat and a brilliant chat with Tim Vicky yesterday on South American football and the lack of number 10s coming into Brazil football. They seem to be going the more European route and going for the bigger, the faster players. So I'm going to go for Chelsea's Stivao, not Estevao. He pronounced it Stivao. So I'm going to go for him, who had he sort of mini breakout season last year. I think under Xabi Alonso, I think he's going to be an absolute world beater. I could see him getting close to the numbers that Neymar got when he finished playing for, if he is finished for Brazil. I think he's tailor-made over the next couple of seasons to go into the Chelsea side, be that Brazilian superstar, churn out the numbers, get the games, get the goals, get the assists, but look like a Brazilian number 10. If we close our eyes and we think about Brazilian number 10s, we think of Neymar and we think of Zico, this kid could be the man.
5 goals in 11 appearances for Brazil. I suppose the question regarding him, he's 19, he's got so much talent. How much game time do you think he sees to begin the season, especially with the addition of Morgan Rogers, and they've got Cole Palmer, they've got Joao Pedro. Can he get that spot on the right-hand side?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you tried to pick a Chelsea 11, I think that's the front four you'd go with. You'd go with Joao Pedro 9, Cole Palmer 10, Morgan Rogers off the left, and Stavao off the right-hand side. And you think, like, on paper, that's sexy. Again, if Cole Palmer wants to be moved to the right-hand side, Stavao could play as that number 10. So I think right across the board, right across those 3 positions, there's plenty of rotation. But I would imagine Xabi Alonso knows a player when he sees one, and he'll recognise the talent if he hasn't seen him, which I would imagine he has already. I would imagine pretty quickly in pre-season he'll recognise the kid's special.
Now, I'm intrigued. Does Rob Dawson stay in the Northwest for his pick, or does he go outside of the boundaries of the M62?
M62. Well, it's not just Manchester. It's a bit of both. I've gone for James Trafford on the understanding that he's going to end up at Leeds United. I think he's a terrific goalkeeper. I think he had a really, really rough deal at City last season. I think he went to City thinking he was going to be number 1. Wasn't expecting Donnarumma to arrive, and obviously got his number 1 shirt taken off him. He was terrific in some big games for City last season. The Carabao Cup final, which is obviously remembered for Nico O'Reilly scoring 2 goals in the second half. But that wouldn't have been possible if James Trafford hadn't made a number of saves in the first half. Ended the season with a Carabao Cup winners medal and FA Cup winners medal. I think that if he goes to Leeds and plays regularly, if he has as good a season as I would expect him to have, I think there's a chance that by the end of the season, he's England's number 1. He's that good.
I like that. I really like that. And I like the signings that Leeds have made. If they can get him, Harry Wilson's a good signing as well. And I think they've added Smart to their squad. What do you think they're capable of? If they are to get Trafford, can they get a top 10 finish? Can they push for a European spot, Rob?
Well, I think this is the danger of the Premier League, because if you get your recruitment right, I think for those middling teams, I think that you can push to get into Europe, Conference League, Europa League, if you have a really good season. The flip side of that is if you don't get your recruitment right, if you have a bad start, you can end up in a relegation battle, and James Trafford could be a championship player again in 2 seasons' time. So I think that's not necessarily just for Leeds. I think that's for a bulk of about 8 to 10 teams in the Premier League, that if you get the decisions right within your recruitment strategy, there is an opportunity there to challenge for European football, possibly even flirt with the Champions League a little bit if some of the big boys don't get it right. But also, if you don't get it right, you make a couple of mistakes, you go through a run where you maybe don't win for 15 games, you can end up in a relegation battle and back in the Championship. I think the Premier League is that tight. I think if Leeds are looking at players like Trafford, and we expect that Trafford deal to get done, I think there's a possibility that Leeds could have a really good season. Having stayed up last year, they could consolidate and get in the top 10 in the Premier League. That's what I would expect, particularly with the crowd and the support they get at Ellen Road. I would just be a little bit wary with any of those teams in that middle sort of 10 clubs, that if it doesn't go well, if they go through a run that is particularly poor, you can end up in the bottom 3, and then it's very, very difficult to get out. So it'll be fascinating really to see what the likes of Leeds and Sunderland particularly can do next season.
You're starting to sound a bit like Sam there. No easy games and tough midweek trip to Hull away from home. I get that. I just enjoy watching Leeds, and hopefully they do well. So Trafford's a really good pick. I've gone for someone who has kind of swapped Spurs for Brighton, not Van Hecke, who's gone the other way. I've gone for a 19-year-old massive centre-back. He's strong, he's powerful, he can pass the ball. He cost a club record 46 million from Spurs. His name is Luka Vuskovic, the centre-back who was on loan at Hamburg last season, having joined Spurs from Hajduk Split for 12 million. He's everything you want from the modern day centre-back. He's a big threat in the opposition box, a goal scorer, a very good passer of the ball. He's tall, he's strong, and he's powerful. And as a fantasy Premier League player, I think he's a steal at 5 million to go along with Phil Foden at just 7 million. You've got to take 1 or 2 risks in that game.
So that's him going to Chelsea in 2 years' time then.
Dude, no, it's 12 months' time. Uncle Tony Bloom will do the business. Maybe a season on loan at Hearts to help us with our conference and Champions and Europa League campaigns. But no, I like that. I like that. By the way, I believe that that you both have more left field shouts. We've given you license, Sam and Rob, to add one more to your picks. Sam, who you got?
Yeah, let's get like deep into preseason here and just get really overexcited for almost no reason whatsoever. Have you guys seen what Brian Maggio has been doing for Aston Villa in preseason? Do you know who Brian Maggio is?
You talk about him all the time when you come on the show. He's a big boy.
So he's 17 and a half. Villa signed him in January from Metz. He is not allowed to play right now because he is under the age of 18 and he has 3 caps for Luxembourg in friendlies. So despite the fact that he's English and is born in Enfield, because his nationality is officially Luxembourg, courtesy of those 3 caps in friendlies, I might add, so he can switch back if he wants to. He currently can't play for Aston Villa in the Premier League until he turns 18, which will be in January. So he's got an appeal in with CAS, and we're waiting to see if there can be some extenuating circumstances applied to get him going a little bit earlier, so for this season. And if so, he'll make the squad because Unai Emery's got him training with the team and he really likes him, and he is firing in goals in pre-season. This guy is absolutely huge. So whether it's in August or January, Brian Maggio will suddenly burst onto your screen and steal your attention, and you won't have a clue what you're watching. Honestly, it's remarkable.
Is he the modern day version of a player you used to have posters of on your wall when he played for Villa between 89 and 91, Ian Ormondroyd?
Oh, what a name that is.
I'm so sorry, Mark. It's slightly before my time.
I know. I'm just saying, surely your parents would have told you about Ian Ormondroyd. Hutch, you remember that?
Yeah, absolutely, I remember him.
Yeah,
absolutely, I remember him. About 9 foot tall.
He was 6'5", and Maggio is 6'4", so he's certainly one that we can look forward to seeing come January if he's unsuccessful with his appeal to CAS to play for Villa. But every time you're on the show, Sam, before we start recording, you always try and get a mention for Brian Maggio, so I really hope he's not a dud. Rob, who have you got as your really ridiculously left field? Here's one I made earlier pick.
Well, I've gone for a player who's even younger. JJ Gabriel at Man United is only 15 years old. Now, he wasn't eligible to play in the Premier League last season. He is eligible to play this season if selected. He's trained with Ruben Amorim when he was United manager. He's trained with Michael Carrick. He was taken to Norway for a friendly against Rosenborg with the first team squad on Friday. He was the under-18s Premier League Player of the Year last year, despite being 14 at the start of the campaign. He's an attacking midfielder, likes to play centrally. I think if he's going to play in the first team, we may see a situation like with Max Darman where he starts out wide, and if he makes the grade, then he'll move inside. There's an awful lot of excitement around him at Man United. Lots of Man United fans are already well aware of him. They watched him play in the Youth Cup final against City at the end of last season. What may happen next season, I'm not suggesting that he's going to play week in, week out, obviously not, but he's eligible to sign scholarship terms in the summer of 2027. Now, a year ago, there was a lot of interest from bigger clubs in him, and United went on this massive charm offensive led by Jason Wilcox to keep him at Man United. But his advisors and his family are very, very keen for him to have a pathway to first team football. And I just think that if he's eligible to sign scholarship terms with anyone in a year's time, Man United this season may have to show him that there is a pathway to that first team. And whether that means being on the bench a couple of times for the Carabao Cup games, or maybe, he appears a couple of times in the Premier League, just to show him that the possibility is there. I think that may happen. The talent is obviously there, first team. And Carrick has already seen him a lot in training. As I said, Ruben Amorim brought him in, was the first manager to bring him into first team training. I'm not suggesting that he's going to end the season as the PFA Young Player of the Year or anything like that. But I think that in terms of, making a name for himself in front of a wider audience this season may be it for JJ Gabriel. He's certainly one to look out for.
Yeah, saw some of his clips of the way he can dribble. Just incredible. Looks a right talent. But you know, you're getting old, Don, when you see that he was born 2 years after you finished your playing career at Luton.
There's a young kid at Newcastle called Utempip, I think, who's 15 as well. He's meant to be mega. So he's a centre-back that can play in midfield. Can I just give a little shout-out to one that's not particularly left field, but it could be a big season for him, Harvey Elliott.
Yeah.
Let's just hope Harvey Elliott, wherever he is this season, can try and play some football.
Yeah, well, maybe he's involved for Liverpool against Wrexham, which is live on ESPN this evening, alongside Steve McManaman. We'll have full coverage across the United States. My thanks to Rob and to Sam and to Don. We're away to try and uncover more young gems that can maybe be stars in the Premier League going forward. Thanks for your company. See you again soon. Bye for now.